to episode 120 of Popcorn and Prosecco, a show that's all about talking about movies. I am Perri Nemiroff, and here are my co-hosts, Kristy Puchko and Angie Han.
Hey, everybody.
I was waiting for someone to speak.
I thought last week I jumped on Angie, and so I was like, I will wait. But I think Angie thought the same thing because then neither of us said anything.
Rock paper scissors thing where then you both do paper or something, and
we're both paper.
Fuck that, man.
Not even the good choices, just paper.
Hey, before we have more awkward silence, let's talk about our one big movie of the week, Independence Day: Resurgence. We are just reviewing that this whole episode, so it is a supersized review for you where we will talk about the movie and then so many thoughts, and at some point we are going to warn you that we're going to talk about spoilers, so that's coming as well. So first, let's jump into it with the IMDb synopsis. 2 decades after the first Independence Day invasion, Earth is faced with a new extrasolar threat, but will mankind's new space defenses be enough? What a shitty synopsis.
That is a terrible synopsis. That is literally the first 10 minutes, and I don't know, having seen the movie, what an extrasolar threat is.
I was just going to say, is extrasolar even like a common
That would make me
phrase?
think it's like super sun, and that has nothing to do with
anything. Yeah.
Okay, you guys are being really hard on the synopsis. You try to summarize the fucking movie. It makes no sense.
All right, well, basically
aliens are
all
back
that it is
20 years later.
Yeah,
Jeff Goldblums
that's
it up.
really all that it is. So yeah, it's 20 years later. The aliens are back, and the certain people on Earth knew they were coming, so they made this thing called the Earth Space Defense Program, and they combine human technology with alien technology so we could use it to fight them, which I think is a really cool place to start. That's really interesting. The problem from there is that well, I should preface it by saying I am a hardcore Independence Day fan. The 1996 Independence Day is one of my favorite movies to watch of all time. I have seen it. I mean, I've seen this thing dozens of times. I can quote almost the whole movie from beginning to end. I still love watching it today and think it holds up really well. I just watched it again the other day. This movie, I don't want to say I walked into this movie with sky-high expectations, hoping for my masterpiece and the sequel that I always dreamed of, but there's a big difference between making a so-so sequel that does not meet expectations and making one that upsets fans of the original. When I walked out of the movie, I was almost in tears because I couldn't wrap my head around existing in a place now where the events of Independence Day Resurgence don't taint how I love the original. You know?
Yeah. Wait, why did Resurgence, what about it made it so that it retroactively taints the original, other than just it's a shitty sequel?
Because there's so many key players from the original involved. Like what they do with President Whitmore. Now when I go back and I watch that first film and I know where he's heading.
I totally agree. I absolutely agree. So here's the thing. It's like they don't know how to leave well enough alone. And instead of being like, okay, it's 20 years later, we're going to get a new cast of characters who have to deal with this threat again, they do this thing where they kind of half-heartedly take some people from then and some people from now. And when they take the people from then, they eradicate all the happy endings we hoped we got. President Wilmore lost his wife, and that was terrible. But he was, with his daughter, and they were going to be okay. And then, they cut to this movie, and he has, depression beard and has, weird, Howard Hughes nonsense going on. And you're like, what is going on with him? And it's just super depressing and gross. And then, Jeff Goldblum, remember how he got back together with his wife in the last movie? She is not around. We never talk about her. We've completely forgotten she exists. Even the dad was like, when are you going to get a beautiful woman in your life? Completely forgot she exists. And then it's Will Smith's character is dead. That has nothing to do with anything. That just happened in between the 20 years because they couldn't get him to sign back on.
Did that moment get a laugh in your screen when all of a sudden he popped up?
No, okay. I actually went to the press screening, and in case you don't follow film Twitter obsessively, the press screening for this movie actually occurred after the movie had opened to the public. So there was only a few people at my screening.
I saw it when it opened to the public. I saw it in a regular public screening, and people laughed when because the first time that Will Smith is mentioned is when you are in the White House and then
they literally have
a big
oil painting of him,
and it's so funny. Our theater laughed. It was very dumb.
They seem to have been. I had done the set visit for Independence Day Resurgence, and they seem to have had some cooler ideas with that. Because when we went there and we were in the art department room, they had cool comics featuring Captain Stephen Hiller, as though he was almost like their superhero,
folk hero.
because of what he had done.
To be released as like supplementary marketing material, or like
No,
for being in the movie?
More so for being in the movie. Like, I would have imagined those being props that people would have
That would
carried
have
around,
made more
and
sense.
that would have been a much nicer way to have honored the character in this, rather than a really hokey portrait in the White House.
Well, also because there's such an off-the-cuff line. They're like, Captain Hiller, it's nice to meet you. Of course, we know your father by reputation. It's a shame he died in that test pilot crash. And you're like, what the hell? Who says that? No one says that to someone. And there's like a lot of lines in this movie that have like heavy exposition because they're just trying to fill the gap. Like, there's literally a line in this movie where one person says to another, "You've been in a coma for 7,300 days."
I think that a lot of this is kind of one of the biggest problems with this movie is that there are about 27 different characters that you're supposed to keep track of on some level, and I think that all the stuff that you guys are saying, so much of the problem is that with that many goddamn characters, it can't actually develop any of them or give any of them satisfying arcs or motivations. I think actually, like, it's shitty what they do to a lot of the old characters. I agree, but it's almost worse what they do to the new characters. Like, I'm not as sad about it because I don't care about them, but that's the problem. Like, this franchise wants to keep going, so they're like, oh, now your new heroes are like Liam Hemsworth and Micah Monroe and
Jesse
Usher, who plays Will Smith's son, and like
and
there's like
gross
two other
Nicholas
extra
Wright
characters, and like
who's
they're like, oh, those are your new heroes. Are you excited? And then like none of them do anything. You could consolidate all five of those characters into like one or two characters and be fine. And it really just raises the question of like, why bother?
No, I totally agree. There's like all these pilots that fly in and like they reenact the first movie, but they're like, well, if we go in there and we blow up this thing, then everything's gonna be okay. And then that doesn't work because we've already done this. And it's to the point where you're like, we've already seen this. So there's like a 30-minute section of the movie that is just reenacting the last movie, and you're like, no, we know. And I don't understand, like, was there a big demand to even want a sequel to this movie? Because I love Independence Day and I will watch it every time it's on, and I will cry every time Bill Pullman talks about how the world has to come together. But, like, I never wanted them to pick this story back up. And it's like they pick it up only 20 years later, so it's like...
They've been talking about this ever since the first one was a big hit, per usual with this industry. So it's not like this kind of came out of nowhere decades down the line. Like, Roland Emmerich's been... That's the scary thing to me, is that Roland Emmerich's been working on an Independence Day sequel, in some respect, for like 20 years now, and this is the movie that we get. It's absolutely horrifying. As a big fan, if you say Independence Day 2, I'm going to want to see it no matter what. And when they first started releasing information about this, I thought they had some great ideas. I like the idea of them combining the human tech with the alien tech. I think that's really interesting. I like the idea of us using that to build a base on the moon, because, you know, at this point in reality, obviously we're not building bases in that respect, but we're close to doing something, you know, lunar, in space, whatever. So I like that. And then going back to the President Whitmore thing, I thought that was even pretty interesting. The fact that his encounter with the alien could have that kind of lasting effect. So it's like introducing all these cool little details and then just saying them and not doing anything with them.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, it's the same thing as I was complaining about the characters. There's just, like, there are good ideas. Like, you're right. When I hear them, even when I hear them right now, I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. I want to know about that. But this movie doesn't tell you, because it introduces them, and then it doesn't have enough time, or like, it doesn't give it enough time or attention. So all of it goes nowhere. Like, for example, the whole thing about, like, oh, they combined, like, alien tech and, like, human tech. Like, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then when you see it in the movie, you're like, oh, they just look like guns that look slightly different, I guess.
It's,
like,
it's interesting to the point where you can very clearly connect the dots. Like, the combination tech that I found really interesting was, I loved how human jet fighters were moving. I love how I'm doing hand motions right now, like everyone can see me, but how the human jets move like the alien spacecrafts that we saw in the first movie. That's interesting. Giving people souped up guns with green glowy shit all over it. Yeah, you know, not really.
I mean, even the fighter pilot
that's
stuff,
like, could be a neat background detail, but that's the thing. Like, there's just, I don't know, this movie feels like such a jumble. Like, there are all these new characters. We didn't even talk about the busload of children, the literal busload of children that are wedged into this movie.
Wait. Before we talk about the busload of children, tell me you guys noticed the dog.
Yes.
We noticed the dog.
That's okay. See, here's the thing. That's what I'm talking about. It's literally like they're like, oh, we saved a dog last time. We have to have another dog, but this time.
I love all animals. It's very difficult to put an animal in a movie and have me not like that animal. Why do you cast a dog that looks like that?
It's ugly. Are you body shaming the dog?
No, that's breed shaming. I think
its
this is
eyes
amazing.
were popping out of its head.
It was an ugly dog.
I don't know. Maybe
I thought that Perri liked animals. It turns out she's really
this
just
movie
like
broke her.
The pretty
It
one.
might have just been that point in the movie where I had had enough. But when they introduced the dog, I did one of those things where I was laughing. I couldn't stop, and then every single time the dog popped up in the background, I was laughing. Oh my god! I just don't understand why you don't cast a classic dog like Boomer in the first one.
You like Chappie, but you're mad at this dog because it's not cute enough?
Can we agree that Michael Monroe seems like she's asleep in this movie, though? I know that you really like her from It Follows, but
what does she have to wake up for? They don't give her anything to do.
That's
like,
true.
If I were, she probably saw the script and was just like, well, fuck, I guess I could just sleepwalk through this one. I mean, that's the thing with like all the new characters, and the old ones too, really. But like the old ones at least have like established personalities from the last film that they can kind of like carry on. Like Jeff Goldblum is Jeff Goldblum. Like, like Brent Spiner and the Judd Hirsch, just like the same characters or whatever. But the new characters, we're meeting them for the first time, and none of them have personalities. They kind of have personality types.
Well, Micah's is a continuation
they're trying to get
character.
Liam Hemsworth to play the Will Smith, like the new Will Smith, like the cocky, arrogant, but so charming. But it's Liam Hemsworth. It's Gale from the Hunger Games.
Okay,
yeah, that
here's
was
the
ever
thing,
gonna
though.
work.
I actually thought he was kind of fun and charming in this, and I am more shocked by anybody about that. But it felt to me like this was his Han Solo audition, where he was being like, I can do this spin up, look at me go. And it's okay, but it's like, it's not
his fault, because they also don't give him much to do, so I'm not completely laying the blame on him.
Also, why does he know why does he know Jeff Goldblum's character? Because, like, they set up that they have a relationship, but they never have set up, like, how the fuck that happened. He just shows up to pick him up.
That's such a minor point in the sea of things about this movie that makes no sense. Should we?
I imagine they would know each other through Patricia Whitmore, who knows him.
That's true. They do have mutual friends. They also both know Jesse Usher's character.
Yeah,
like they have a lot of friends in common. So
also, like, we spent so much time on the
really
space
disappointing
station
that they didn't explore the relationship between Patricia and Dylan a little more. It's just the fact that it's like, oh, you guys were in the movie together, you guys know each other. But like they were joking on set during my interview. It's like, could you imagine the 4th of July barbecues between our families? But like, yeah, I do wonder what life was like for your families between now and the events of the original. It's like not a joke. I really want to bet.
But the even weirder thing about them not exploring it is that is one of the first relationships you see in the movie. Those two characters see each other and they're like really excited to see each other because they're like friends, and you're like, oh, cool, they're friends, and then it like never comes up again, basically.
Yeah,
like people and like, once again, this movie just kind of like introduces things and it's like,
But yet, weirdly, this movie makes enough room for there to be two separate white dude characters whose whole thing is that they're dweebs who are ineffectual and then are actually good at something.
Because
you got that little flyer nerd.
The fact that they're white men that bothers me. This movie would have cost half as much to make if it cut out all the extraneous characters. There are I totally agree. Many,
but like, there's the nerdy flyer kid who's like Liam Hemsworth's buddy, who's crushing on like the reason in this movie will do well in China, Angela baby. But right? Like, there's a character that's in there solely so that, like, China will be excited. And I'm assuming she has more to do in the Chinese version because she has nothing to do in this. But we should go into spoilers. But my point is that this movie, I agree with Angie, this movie has a lot of characters it doesn't need. And it's not like in the first movie.
A lot of ideas that it's
just
like,
it doesn't make the world feel bigger, though. Like, it's supposed to feel global. And because they felt the need to grab onto these, like, tiny characters from the first one, like Will Smith's son and the president's daughter, it feels smaller, not bigger.
So, Perri, you want to take us into spoilers?
Yeah. So, this spoiler. Okay, warning, this is a massive spoiler, and everything we're going to talk about from this point forward is spoilers, so don't listen to this if you don't want Independence Day Resurgence spoiled for you. Alright, what the fuck, that white ball. Really?
Honestly,
I was sitting there like, gripping the
like
handrest of my
point.
seat. I'm like, there's gonna be a point. I'm gonna like something in this. I'm gonna find something. Then that came up, and I'm like, wow, this is it. It's over.
I actually disagreed because up until then, the movie feels so kind of like generically like, I don't know, stuff is crashing. There's an alien, CG, like whatever. And then the alien ball showed up and I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, is this movie about to get like really weird in an interesting way? Like, fucking Jupiter Ascending style or some shit? And then like, no. Like, I actually, that was like my favorite part of the movie when the orb showed up. I was like, what is happening? And I was like, this movie's finally gonna get interesting. And then, and then like the alien is like, first of all, not even like mad that humans tried to kill us. It's just like, you tried to kill me, so that wasn't cool. And people are like, oh, oops. And it's like, it's cool. I'll help you anyway.
Yeah, there's no consequences to that.
No.
Where she's like, I was coming to help you, but I guess it's okay that I still got here in the nick of time. But, like, yeah, that's the big thing in this movie. There's no consequences for the major moments. Like, the aliens almost dig to the Earth's fucking molten core, and they're 2 minutes away. And I'm like, okay, so we're good then? That's still fine? We don't need to worry about the Earth destroying itself because of that? Oh, great, awesome. Because
we don't need to worry about the fact that now there's, like, a giant hole in the ground in the middle of the ocean?
Yeah,
apparently
and like that's
not.
another thing. Like, if that's true, so have the tides receded? Is there more land? What animals? Like, they never get into any of this. They don't care because that's not what it's about. Of course, it's about setting up another goddamn sequel we don't want to watch. But like, it's just crazy. The other thing that really drove me nuts about this is they're like, oh yeah, but there was a queen alien, so she's like the other ones, but bigger. And I'm like, one, that is the laziest thing of why we need to bring this movie back. And two, they keep talking about how big she is, but you don't actually get to understand the scale of her until the final sequence. So it's lost on you when they're like, well, here's a scan of the ship, and here's a scan of how big she is. And I was like, this means nothing to me. Like, you need like that little key in the corner. It's like, a human is this big, the alien is this big, because otherwise, what the fuck are we looking at? This is a visual medium. Be visual. What the fuck? Very angry about it. I was like so mad because I saw this movie so late already. Like, I was like coming home and writing the review on my phone because this is what I was forced to do. And like, the movie is just, it has so little impact that I actually forgot major characters died. I was texting with Angie and our friend Eric.
Oh my God. The way like, Vivica A. Fox's character, see, that to me, that right there is the perfect example of like a big fuck you to fans of the original.
You're
to
right,
have a character go that way.
Because it's like, she's not an exotic dancer anymore. She's a doctor.
They brought back a hero from the first film that were like, that, we were happy things ended well for her, and they're like, look, she's back, okay, she died, and you're just like, what? But then, like, it's
right
not
in front
even
of her
that,
son,
like,
guys.
I mean, some of it,
you're welcome.
It's not even just that, like, for example, like, it's also, like, edited in a way where it's hard to tell some characters died. Like, Celia Ward, who plays the President of the United States, dies, and she dies off-screen and so quickly that I didn't realize that she had even been injured until suddenly it just smash cuts to William Fichtner getting, like, sworn in, and they're like,
no, totally.
Everyone died besides you, and I was like, wait, what?
They were going to reveal she had lived because they cut away so abruptly. So I was like, no, she's okay. They're going to find out that she's okay. And then they just never refer to it again.
It really feels like they were just like missing 3 minutes of footage there. Like,
yeah.
someone just like cut it out. It was like, what the fuck? Why?
And I mean, and since we're in spoilers, like even the death of Bill Pullman's character feels like, like by the end of the movie, I forgot he had died because it's like, when Randy Quaid died in the first one, like we took a moment. We were very upset. And he was just a drunken doofus with a cowboy hat. Like, this is the president that we've loved for 2 movies. And like, I forgot he fucking died. That's how poorly directed this is. And it makes me crazy because I think Roland Emmerich, like, I really liked White House Down. I know it didn't do well.
Too.
But I feel like he still has it in him. I don't know what the fuck this is. This felt like he was like, it does feel like a fuck you to fan. It feels like you guys didn't come out for my other movies. This is what you want, this garbage, and it makes me really nervous.
I look at this movie and I look at Stonewall, his most recent movie before this one, and it worries me. I don't know if he's capable of making a coherent film anymore because these 2 movies aren't just bad. They're like really bad. They're incomprehensibly bad. It's weird to me that someone would make something that's such a mess like this. It's really weird to me that there'd be so many people involved in making this movie and so many people that were involved in making the original that are just on set, like saying blah, 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 and doing whatever Roland Emmerich tells them to do, and they think it's going to work. I just don't understand. This movie baffles me. And before we have to wrap up, I was really excited that Brent Spiner was returning to play Dr. Oaken again. I loved that idea, and he feels like a cartoonish version of Dr. Oken. And did either of you pick up on the relationship thing?
Yeah. Okay. So I asked Angie about this because I was like, I said, is he supposed to be in a gay romance, or did I make that up because I was so bored I needed something to follow?
You definitely didn't make that up, but when they first introduced it, Dr. Oken is still in his coma, and some guy comes in to water these orchids that he's been leaving in his room for however many years.
Gay guys love orchids. And everybody knows it.
But when he comes in, he looks like he's in, like, doctor attire. So I assumed he's been his doctor. And then as the movie goes on, you see them, like, holding hands and calling each other baby. And I'm like, oh, is that what's happening here?
I honestly, like, didn't, like, so Roland Emmerich, before this movie came out, Roland Emmerich was telling press, like, oh, there's, like, you know, there's a gay couple in this, and people were like, oh, that's cool, like, you know, that's not something you see in every blockbuster, so people were like, that's kind of exciting, and then I had kind of forgotten about it, and then I saw this, and it literally wasn't until the death scene, since we're in spoilers, until he dies, that I was just like, oh, they were supposed to be a couple. Like, up until then, the thing is that I haven't revisited the original in a long time, so when I saw the guy, I was like, oh, I guess that's, like, a character from the original I don't remember. Like, I don't know.
Is
when
he
did
in
they
the
start
original? I didn't remember him either.
See, that's the problem with it, too, is that, you know, there's no reason to kind of connect the dots in that respect and think, oh, this guy has been by his side all these years.
Yeah,
like, that's like, I'm not saying that I need, like, their romance to be a major plot point in the movie, but it does really feel like it's trying to have it both ways. Because when you compare the way the movie treats those two characters who are in a gay relationship to the characters who are in straight relationships,
which
like,
is
it's
true.
a lot more blatant and explicit. Like, there's a lot more, like, you know, like, they kiss.
Yeah, Micah
like,
Monroe,
Liam
like,
Hemsworth
throws herself
like,
at Liam Hemsworth and, like, makes
they
out with him
embrace in like a sexy way. Like, they talk all the time about, like, oh, we're getting married, we live together, like, all that stuff. Like, they have conversations about it, and, like, even like the two heterosexual characters that don't actually get together, you know, like, the guy's like, oh, like, I have a crush on this girl, and he asks her out on a date, and she accepts. Like, it's very, very, like, there's no questioning that it's, like, a romantic or sexual thing between them. But with the other two, they try to have it both ways, where they were like, oh, they're in a relationship. But, like, I think it's very possible to watch this entire movie and, like, not quite pick up on it.
Oh, I had lengthy conversations about this movie after I got out, and most of the people I was with did not pick up on that.
Yeah,
well, and even as a hardcore fan who has seen the original movie countless times, I didn't really remember that other guy.
So like, was he in the other one? I didn't remember him at all.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's
good for him, I guess.
The original movie. But, like,
I mean, that was the death scene that actually mattered to me.
He's got a name, and in the first movie, I would never have been able to tell you his name. That kind of thing, you know?
I mean, I have to say, I did like their relationship, even though I was not aware until the death scene that it was a romantic relationship, because I got that they cared about each other, which is not something that I felt with a lot of the other characters. Like, I know they had dialogue that was like, I really love you, fiancé, let's move into a new house together, but, like, that gives me nothing, whereas, like, I believe that they cared about each other, but the degree to which they did, or the depth of their feelings, wasn't clear until that last scene. And I felt like in that way it reminds me of when J.K. Rowling is like, oh yeah, by the way, Dumbledore's totes gay, and you're like, okay, but, like, you don't really get, like, credit for representation when you are, like, purposely not addressing it. And, like, I feel like the movie, like you said, it's so subtle that I feel like if you don't pick up on that, like, you cannot be blamed for that.
It's the only thing about the movie that's fucking subtle.
I was gonna say, it's funny for a movie that has to spell everything out, then when it doesn't, it's still a problem.
It's the kind of movie that's like, as you know, your father died 20 years ago. And and then with these two characters, like, up until that very last scene, I was like, is that his doctor? Is that, like, his friend? Like, is that his brother? Like, I literally just, like, did not have any idea what that relationship was supposed to be. But we've gone way over. We should wrap up.
All right.
Oh, guys, Brent Spiner. Wait, one sec. So that doctor character has been asleep for 20 years. His partner just died, and then he's gonna find out gay marriage is legal? This is a very sad movie.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff that happens when we're not watching, like how President Whitmore suddenly loses his crazy person beard, and you're just like, really? In the middle of an alien
there was a close-up
attack,
on
like,
it,
I need to stop for 10 minutes and, like, shave my face clean. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep. He had to be dashing for his heroic death scene.
While that was happening, they were explaining gay marriage to the guy that was in a coma for 20 years.
There you go. Well, at the end of this, they actually, like, they dare to insult us by making everybody kiss and make up, and then go, now we have, like, a space war to fight. And I was like, oh, fuck you. I am, like, erasing this from my headcanon. As far as I'm concerned, there is no Independence Day Resurgence. I love Independence Day. I will continue to watch it. I will not remember this happened.
I wish I had that ability. I'm kind of I'm kind of heartbroken. I'm really sad. I really, it sounds ridiculous and over the top, but I walked home from my screening really just hurt. I felt
I'm imagining like Arrested Development where that like
my childhood was
sad
just like
music plays,
smashed to pieces.
Oh,
it's just I'm really upset because I've also spent so many years now following this sequel. I don't know. It really does a big disservice to the
guys,
original.
this makes me scared about Ghostbusters. I'm really excited for Ghostbusters. What if this has been a shit summer for sequels?
I'm glad I'm not as attached to the original Ghostbusters as I was to the original Independence Day, because I don't think I could go through feeling like this again.
Man, I think at least it doesn't look like Ghostbusters is so much a sequel that'll feel the need to do those tenuous lines to be like, hey, remember how this sort of connects or whatever, because
they are going to make a shit ton of references. They're going to shoehorn in so many references because that's how that kind of crap works.
But there's a way to do that I think can be fun for like old time fans but not disruptive to new time fans. But like with Independence Day Resurgence, it's fucking dull because they're like pinning it down so hard to the first movie.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure it's big 3, like thumbs down. So I'm doing hand motions again. No one sees me. Thumbs down all around, correct?
Yeah.
We're giving thumbs down and Angie's flipping the bird. No one can see her to prove otherwise.
I'm not flipping the bird. It's a movie. You know, there's pictures and noise and then it ends.
That was Angie's Twitter review. Almost verbatim.
Apparently you should rewrite the IMDb synopsis. All right, that's a wrap on episode 120 of Popcorn and Prosecco. You guys know where to find us. Go on iTunes and please subscribe, rate, and comment over there. We have our website, popcornprosecco.com. Please like us on Facebook. We also have our Twitter at Popcorn Prosecco, and then all three of us are all over the internet as well. Angie, you want to go first?
Yes, you can find me on Twitter at AJHAN, and I write for slashfilm.com.
Kristy?
I can be found on Twitter at Kristy Puchko. That's KRISTYPUCHKO. And I write all over the web, but you can find my career highlights at decadentcriminals.com. And this week there I have a ton of reviews. I reviewed every movie that opened.
And you can catch me on Twitter and Instagram at Nemiroff. I'm on the Collider Videos YouTube channel. And you can find my very lengthy, very sad Independence Day Resurgence review on Collider.com. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
They're not screaming. They're celebrating.